Well, you mentioned some of the president's actions. I know that you saw that President Trump posted a video depicting the Obamas as apes. And then hours later, he said he is the least racist president in a long time. Do you believe President Trump is racist?
I think that's a question for President Trump. I can tell you I know how his actions hit black folks and how they hit people of color. When we are watching a president who has spent his time going after scholarship programs for HBCUs, when we've watched a president who's now had the greatest assault on black female employment that we have seen in our nation's history in just the past year, when we've seen the President of the United States trying to ban books, change our history, minimize our history, and yes, when we've seen a President of the United States thinking it's funny to put out videos depicting the former First Family as apes, I think the question of is he a racist should be posed to him, but frankly, I think his actions probably give the answer before he even has a chance to answer it himself.
Governor, I want to ask you about the Epstein files because they have dominated the headlines lately. And I want to ask you about this because, among many other things, it does bring up some issues about trust in the American system. I think Americans are united in their disgust of what they have learned in these files. How do elites and institutions and the government rebuild Americans' trust in the system?
I think these files are sickening. And with every new piece of information that comes out, it's even more grotesque and offensive. I think there needs to be accountability for what happened as to why it took so long for people to get an understanding of just the depth of this heinous behavior. And frankly, I think there needs to be accountability. I think part of the reason, I think there needs to be accountability for anybody who was in those files, and I do not care. I think if you are found guilty of doing these horrific things to these children, I do not care your background nor political affiliation. Justice has to be served. And justice has to be served for these little girls. The people who their lives have been shattered. And so I think part of the reason, part of the break of trust that people have is they're like, we've known about these things for a long period of time. And how many people have gone to jail for it? How many people have been arrested?
A woman, Ghislaine Maxwell.
One person. How many people have even been questioned? So I understand the frustration. I have it too. Because the lack of accountability, the lack of transparency, and frankly, the lack of justice that we have seen from this has been staggering. And so I stand with the many, many Americans who say there needs to be accountability for what happened to these children. And I don't care where it leads, and I don't care who is responsible. If you are a person who's found guilty of these heinous actions, you must meet justice.
Governor, I know you are focused on running for re-election as governor, but would you ever consider running for president?
No. I'm excited about my job. I'm excited about the work that we're doing. I'm asking everybody here for their vote in November. And you know, and I can say that with a very real deal of comfort. Because I remember when one of my mentors, Elijah Cummings, when he passed away. And there are people who were close to Elijah who contacted me and they knew about our relationship and they said, we really think you should consider running for Congress and running for his seat. And I told him I thought about it and I prayed on it, but I was like, that's not what I want to do. And there was
so you're saying you're never going to run for president?
Yeah, so like when they started talking about that, I said that there was nothing that anyone could say to me to make me do it. And I remember when I told people that I was going to run for governor, I had people who came and said, you're crazy. You're polling at 1%, you're not going to win, you're going to embarrass yourself. And I said, there's nothing that anyone could tell me to get me not to run. And so I'm not running for president.
But you're not saying that you won't ever run.
I don't see a reason. I love my job.
Okay.
And I love what I'm doing. And I think, and listen,
Who would you like to run for president?
Who would I like to run?
I guess the audience likes these questions.
They do. They do. You know, I think there's a tremendous amount of talent. And one thing I will say, too, is I don't think it's about who is the leader of the Democratic Party. I think, you know, no one should be focusing on who's going to lead the Democratic Party. They need to focus on who's going to work to heal the country. The country needs healing right now. And we need a leader who's going to be future-facing and to be hopeful and actually have results to show. So I appreciate the fact that people are looking at the fact that Maryland has, you know, that we have amongst the fastest drops in crime rates anywhere in this country, that we've gone from 43rd in the country to unemployment to now having an unemployment rate that's consistently below the national average, that we've been able to raise minimum wages, that we've been able to make sure we're getting young people employed and have the first time in the country you have a targeted effort to address the issue of child poverty, and people are paying attention to that. But when I think about the future, I want to see people that have real results to show for, because I think the best predictor of what future opportunity is going to be is what have you done to meet the moment now?
I want to continue the conversation about immigration because I think it is a very important one. And President Donald Trump won the presidency in 2024, promising this immigration crackdown that we are witnessing. The Biden administration allowed over 4 million migrants into the country through the southern border during his term in office. Are Democrats to blame for this immigration crisis that we're witnessing?
Well, I definitely think that the former president did not have this right.
You do?
Oh, yes, and we needed to do more. That I don't think anyone can argue that we had the system worked out under President Biden, that immigration was worked out. But actually, I would argue that we have not had the system worked out amongst multiple administrations. Immigration has been an issue that we as a country have punted on for a very long time, because the people who can uniquely fix immigration is Congress. And this is the frustrating thing for me with this Congress right now, where I feel we're just watching a continued abdication of responsibility, where if the speaker, the ironic thing is right now, the president has, then the president's party has the presidency, the House, and the Senate. If the president wanted immigration reform done right now, do you know what he could do? He would call up the Speaker of the House, and he said, I need a bill on my desk by next week. And do you know what will be on his desk next week? A comprehensive immigration bill reform, because they have the votes. And that's not happening. So instead of doing comprehensive immigration reform, which would include things like secure the border, include things like making sure we're giving pathways to citizenship, and making sure we're having common sense laws that can make sure that people are seen and supported, but we are going to enforce our laws, we would have this fixed, but it is not happening. And it's not happening because they're not actually interested in solving the problem.
There is a cost of living crisis in America, with millions of Americans struggling to pay for housing, childcare, health care. Maryland's state comptroller put out a report recently saying that working-aged, middle-income households are moving away to more affordable states. So how big of a problem is that? What are you doing about it?
I mean, it is a national problem, but it is a very big problem in the state of Maryland. It's just harder to get by. And frankly, it's not fair. When I'm watching 37% of young Marylanders say that they would consider leaving the state for one reason, housing costs. When I'm watching people who are saying, I don't understand how my energy bill went from $250 to $800, it's not fair to them. And I know, I think about my mom. I look at the situation that we grew up in. Like, I didn't grow up from a family of wealth. Like, this kind of stuff matters. In fact, my mother still to this day is like, why is my energy bill so high? So I get it every day.
And so what's your answer to your mother?
So, honestly, my answer is that we have not done enough to be able to really fortify the grid, to get more energy options. We haven't done enough when it comes to housing to be able to build more housing. And so the solutions that we have put on board, when it comes to things like energy, we've provided last year $200 million in rebates to Marylanders to make sure we're putting more money back in their pocket.
Catch the entire town hall with Governor Moore on the CBS News app and Paramount Plus. And our next Things That Matter town hall with Vice President J.D. Vance will take place next month. Tony DeCoppel will speak with him in North Carolina. It'll air Saturday, March 14th on CBS and stream on Paramount Plus.